Ever find yourself torn between playing a video game and watching an anime? Well, here's your answer. Tales of Symphonia. The story begins in a distant world known as Silverant, that's been dying slowly over the years. In order to save it, a chosen one named Colette must embark on a dangerous quest known as the Journey of World Regeneration. You play as Lloyd Irving, a dual-wield swordsman and close friend of Colette who decides to join her on her journey and protect her from the dangers that stand in her way. And let me tell you, Colette would be so dead without help, but I'll talk about that later. This game is a real-time RPG. Whenever you encounter an enemy, the screen will change to a battlefield where your fight will take place. As if that wasn't obvious enough. You'll attack using the A button, block with the X button, and perform a technique using the B button. What's interesting about this is that the technique you perform will be different depending on the direction you hold the control stick in. For example, if you press B while holding up on the control stick, you'll perform whatever technique is set for that direction. It's a little tricky to figure out at first, but it feels pretty natural after you get the hang of it. One thing that really bothered me about the combat was that you could only move left and right. This can become a problem if you're surrounded by enemies while your allies are off doing who knows what, when you're trying to avoid a magic spell, or when you just wanted to attack from a different angle. And come on, the other party members can run around freely. Why can't I? One feature about this game I really liked was that there were short conversations between the characters called skits. The subject of these conversations ranged from serious to downright silly. Of course, if you'd much rather move on, you can just bypass them, but it won't go away. It'll just linger there at the bottom of the screen, watching, waiting, never leave. Confound it, go away already! Fine, I'll watch the skit. The world's design was pretty nice for the most part. You'll visit a lot of interesting towns as you travel, though while some of them are downright awesome, others are just sorta plain. Earlier, I mentioned that Colette, the chosen one, would have met her demise quite swiftly if it weren't for all the help you give her. Well, I wasn't exaggerating because she is the most useless character in any game I've ever played. I mean, it's ridiculous the level she's on when it comes to sucking at everything. Colette is awful in battle and struggles to carry her own weight, which might be due to the fact that she fights with freaking frisbees. She's a burden even during the story, as all she does is hold the party back by getting captured, injured, and even sick. Now, she does learn new powers as well as the other party members do, but even after that she's still terrible. There were a few fully animated cutscenes in the game that came on when something important happened. I loved it whenever they came on, and even though there aren't that many, I still enjoyed them quite a bit. However simple I made the story sound, it is fantastic. It has several plot twists that kept me drooling to find out what was going to happen next. It was awesome, even with Colette constantly slowing me down. Despite all its great features, I still had a few problems with this game. For one, the combat can get pretty repetitive as there are usually quite a few enemies around that respawn if you so much as leave the room they're in. This caused me to get bored with the game at times. Also, I found that when traveling on the world map, there was a whole lot of moving back and forth over long distances at multiple points in the game, which got rather tedious. Tales of Symphonia is a pretty good game. It had a great story, interesting combat scheme, was very long, and was pretty challenging. But, as mentioned earlier, the combat could get very repetitive at times. There was also too much backtracking when it came to traversing the world, and finally, I hated how I could only move left or right in battle. But despite my gripes and a less than helpful chosen one, Tales of Symphonia still deserves a 7.5 out of 10.
Just as I expected.